Oh, welcome to Season 2, Episode 6 of Talks of Outcasts, where we dive into the Bible, life as a Christian, and the journey of ministry. We are two preachers of the gospel. Miles is in the Midwest, where the people are holy, and I am in the Deep South. All right, Miles, how are you today, buddy?
I'm doing well. I'm not not really sure how that got started, but we made it there for the viewers there. It's good times.
And the listeners.
It is starting to get chilly up here.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's starting to be, I guess, chilly. It's like I think the high of today is 70 something, so 60s. Nice, actually. So a little bit of fall. Chris, we don't have much of a fall in this part of Oklahoma. It usually goes from hot. Right? It usually goes from hot to cold.
See, we're going to be close to 90 today.
Jeez.
In fact,
what's the humidity?
Let's see. What is the humidity right now down here in the Deep South? 77%.
That's right. Nothing says welcome to the South like 70% humidity.
Almost 80% and almost 90 degrees in the middle of October.
What's the projected feel like?
I don't. Well, right now it's it feels like 73 and it's 67. So if it's going to be 88 degrees, maybe that'll feel like 95.
It's yeah, that's crazy. Humidity's wild. Really?
Yeah.
You're not used to it.
Humidity is wild. We are 9 degrees above our average daily high for this time of year.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, life is good.
Yeah. How is old K-Dog handling the humidity since?
Well, first of all, I don't know who K-Dog is.
Oh,
and our listeners probably don't know who K-Dog is, but she's fine. Man, y'all are going to be down in the 40s this week.
That's what I'm saying, bro.
Dude, Sunday, y'all going to get down to 46.
I got to wear my coat. It's hoodie time. Well, I would have one on now, but it's kind of hot in my office.
We feel like, for us, the feel like is 7 degrees higher than the temperature. For y'all, the feel like is 8 degrees lower.
Isn't that wild?
Let me check out that humidity. But see, what's crazy is that y'all's humidity right now is 75%.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Well, this is some exciting podcasting we're doing right now.
Yeah, well, I just like to share the humidity points.
On today's episode, Chris and Miles talk about the weather.
Two guys who know nothing about meteorology.
There's a woman in that church, and she and I used to, and I don't think she listens to the podcast, but we used to kind of make fun about small talk, small talk, because neither one of us really felt like we were particularly good at it. And so we were trying to think of topics to just, for small talk. And it was like, the local sports team and, how much rain we've gotten or haven't gotten,
right.
Yeah. So anyway.
The weather.
Yeah.
Well, you see, Chris, there's an updraft happening here.
Well, it wasn't really so much that. It was more like, well, we could sure use some rain.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. All right. Well, let's segue on out of that so let's talk about something. I'm sure we'll have to give a little background and context because most people really have no idea what we're talking about. When it comes to Southern Baptist life, it's that time of year where all annual meetings are being held. Like that being said, your local, oh man, why did I just go blank? Your local association is usually having their meeting this time of year. And then I believe the state convention, at least for Oklahoma, is in November. And then, of course, you'll have the national convention, which is always in June. I think Chris and I look at these two things a little differently. We both think that they're important in their own way, but maybe to the layman, I would say I don't know that they're very important much anymore. What would you say? Well, I guess we have to give context to what it is. Was that more something we should do first?
Probably.
Okay. Well,
Go ahead, Miles.
I'll try to make it clear as mud. So you as a Southern Baptist church, you belong to, of course, the National Convention. But before you can then evolve all the way in there, you start in the association level, which is a group of local churches that are usually in a region of the state. And they work together, they cooperate together to do missions. And the whole thing is for that area of the state or wherever you are, because I think it's different as you get further west and north even. Their areas are vast. So like in Oklahoma, there's a bunch of associations split up, and so they're toward their people, and so everything's supposed to be as churches combining together to reach their counties that they're involved in. And then from there, you have the state level, which would be all of Oklahoma, and you cooperate together. And of course, when I say cooperate, I mean give money, and then that money is then turned into other ministries such as the collegiate ministries, which I'm a part of, disaster relief, which I feel like probably everybody knows about disaster relief because it's such a huge organization that is really doing a lot of work. North American Mission Board, and then, of course, the IMB are part of the missions that we give to. And then, of course, the National Convention, which is humongous. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so like in the state that you are in, the state convention, the annual state meeting is always in the same place. It's always in the same city.
Yeah.
And they'll move the venue around to to different places. Where I am in Texas, it moves around from year to year. And so like this year it's in Abilene, which is out kind of West Texas. I don't know how far that is from where I'm at, but yeah, and it's always in November. And yeah. So make the case for why we should attend these meetings, why we should go, why you think it's important.
Okay. So I'll start locally and then work up. I think that's fair to say. So you as a church I know it differs. I don't know how it works exactly about how many messengers you have, but the messengers are essentially your voice from the church to be heard in your convention. So, or in all the way to the national convention.
So if I could cut in here real quick, just so that everybody understands what we're talking about, because we need to make sure we're not using language that people don't automatically understand. A messenger is like a delegate. We don't call them delegates from each church. We call them messengers. So when you hear the word messenger in this context, think delegate.
Yep. And so the messengers are the ones who really are supposed to be the voice of your church. So where I'm at, First Baptist, they would have messengers go from our church first to the associational level. And the associational level is where you're supposed to be doing ministry in the county. I think it's easier to say it that way because it's just in your segment of the state. Whatever your associational part is just depending on what part of the state you're in. And so where I work with three technical associations, but only really heavily involved in two of those. And so what it is as a church, and our church is in one of those, or the church I attend is in one of those. And so what we do is we go and we hear how money was spent and how they have cooperated together to advance the gospel through missions, local missions and foreign missions and other ways like that. And a lot of times in Oklahoma, we're very big about church camps. That seems to be a thing that we like to do, and I'll be as generous as I can there. But so the association, that one of them, and actually multiple I've been involved in, have a camp, and so a lot of the funds go into that camp to keep it going and all those things. And then, of course, in the state level, which is where I think that we as a church should be very much involved in, because there's a lot of money being used for good things. Some things we still don't really necessarily always understand where it's going, but that's why we should be there. Oklahoma Baptists are very good at doing disaster relief. I would say, we excel in there. And I believe, Chris, your wife did or still is she going to pick it up again, or just
I
take a
don't,
break?
I don't know. They do have, each state kind of has their own version of the disaster relief, and the disaster relief is, of course, whenever there's a disaster. Oklahoma disaster relief, Texas disaster relief, Georgia, Louisiana. I mean, all these states have these teams
Yeah.
that will go out and they'll serve food, or they'll help with cleanup. They'll chop trees. They'll clean up after floods. I mean, they just kind of step in to help with the recovery process from these things. I don't know if she's going to do it here or not. We haven't really talked about it. It was something that she always really liked and she enjoyed being a part of. But
Yeah.
I don't know if she's going to do it here or not.
Yeah, and so as you go to these meetings, I mean, they're not exciting. So let me just start. No business meeting. Well, that's not true. I've seen some exciting ones, but generally, these meetings are just about how we're spending money. But then, of course, here recently, they become more and more exciting about our doctrinal places and statements and those things. So why is that important, and why should we be involved? Well, first of all, I think that as a church, as you give money, you should know what your money's being done with. I know that I'm not saying that you should be able to, well, I don't know, let me be very careful here. You as a church want to be supporting things that are biblical, and you're wanting to see these things multiply and do well for the kingdom. So if I was to say why I would think that we give, of course, why we still should continue, is you're supporting missionaries, people now. Yes, you should a lot of ways they don't have to fundraise. And so those things are very important. Those things are working. Of course, disaster relief is huge. It's very big. I think probably one of the best things we do, because it's not always, it's gospel centered, but it's very humanitarian. And so if you've looked at like events in the places around here, a lot of times disaster relief shows up before the government. And so there's lots of things that are going on, just good humanitarian things there. They're funded through these things. And then, of course, one of the big things that I've seen lately is churches that can't afford to do mission trips, and things like that, smaller churches. I heard last night, I don't know if you know this, Chris, but the median church size is 75 and under. So it's getting smaller. And so these are supposed to be I don't know why your mic cut out again.
And where is that? Is that just I think your part of the world, or is that across the
I think
across
that
the
it's
country?
Across the convention, but I could be wrong. It could just be in Oklahoma, but I think he said that it was all. And then of course, so what I would say is how it's supposed to work is all this funding comes together and is supposed to embolden and bolster the church. So, I mean, it definitely has its drawbacks for sure, but I think it's an important part of church life to be a part of. I don't know if that made...
Okay. So, but part of the problem we have, and I'm gonna come at this from a little bit different perspective. So just one of the things is just what you said, is that if the median church is around 75, then why don't we see more of those churches, for lack of a better word, featured? You go to these meetings and it's never, the pastor of a church running 75 who's invited to preach. It's always the pastor that's running 7,500 that's invited to preach. There's definitely and I think in some states there's been a real effort to, including yours, there's been a real effort to reach out and get some of those smaller churches more involved by more interaction with the guys at the top. I think your state does a really good job with that, and that, of course, is your state's executive director, Todd Fisher. I think he does a great job reaching out to a lot of those churches. But I think a lot of us feel the frustration because, especially at the national level and even at the state level, where we don't, other than raising our card to vote, and even then they just eyeball it. I mean, it's not like it's an exact number on a lot of things. Now, some things they'll actually count ballots, but then even like anybody can get up and speak at the national meeting, but you've got a very limited amount of time. And they can blow you off if they want to, and we've seen that happen also. And so, there's a lot of frustration from that side of it. So, what would how would you answer that counter?
Well, yes. I think I don't really know if I have the answer to that. I think what you see, I think it has to start somewhere. So in these state conventions that are trying to meet the little churches where they're at and try to help them and bring them more involved, because the national convention is only as strong as the state conventions. I don't know if you would agree with that statement, and I understand right now there's this power play between really seminary presidents and the upper echelon and those types of things. But it's kind of like how, I don't know if I want to do this, but I will. It's kind of like how government happens. In Washington, things are being done, but in your state, things are also being done. And so, like, one of the things I will say about where we're at in Oklahoma is the convention is definitely trying to reimagine the relationship between the churches and the convention. And so I guess I don't know how to answer that question because there's big guys being shut down in the national convention, right?
That's true. And in fairness, you can't give everybody unlimited access to the microphone, or else you'd be there for 18 hours. I mean, that's true and that's fair. But even okay, so laying all of that aside, even when you look at who's being appointed to committees, even when you look at who's being appointed to some of these boards, there's very little small church representation.
Sure.
And so if the average church is this size, then there should be more pastors and people from this size church that are involved in some of these higher level meetings and processes, I would think.
You would think. I also, though, would ask, because it'd be interesting to know how many of those pastors are multivocational. And by that, you could speak more to it than I can about being on state level committees. I don't know how that works with reimbursement, or if that does happen. I don't know. But on the other side of it is there is the uptick in trending of more and more bivocational pastors who have to work for a living and preach for the sake of preaching. You know what I mean? Not that their churches aren't compensating them at least a little, but there is the sense of the need to have the second job to carry everything. And so I can't know this with statistics, but I would just have to wonder how many of those guys could actually uproot and leave to do those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because if you're on the executive committee, which is, the big committee for the convention that makes all the decisions and works through those things, it's a process. Like, you're not gone for one day. You're flying to wherever they're going. Isn't it Tennessee?
Yeah, I think it's like a 3-day meeting. It's not something you can get done in an afternoon. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's extravagant. And so I just wonder if that plays into it. I'm not saying they're asking the little guy. I don't know that. I can't know that. I'm just a guy in the Northwest.
But even if there was more of an effort to, get guys in there that are full time, but maybe not at, huge churches. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are full time that are pastoring churches of 150 or 200. And those guys aren't really invited to the table either. So there's a lot that we do that's really good. And the idea of churches partnering together to do a lot of these things is a good idea. One of the reasons why we have state mission offerings is because what was happening was that you had all these churches, or you had all these missionaries contacting churches, and churches were being hit up, 30, 40 times a year with missionaries coming through that needed to raise money. And
Yeah.
so, you could in some places you could have an entire year where your pastor never preached. You just had a different missionary come to your church every week, and they're all asking for money because they all need funds. Well, and so the idea was, well, why don't we all just partner together, all the churches partner together and do mission offerings and those kinds of things, and we can do more with that if we work together than we can if we just kind of work separately and all work on our own. Well, that's a fantastic idea. I mean, it's a great idea. I just think some of these things, especially at the denominational level, have to be kind of rethought. And how do we engage more with? But part of the problem you've got is that you've got a generation of pastors that have just kind of written off, in large part, the idea of the denominational level meetings and so forth. And I don't know how you re-engage those guys.
I think it's interesting you say that, just because it's very true. But also, I see a lot of younger guys really want to be, maybe even somewhat to a detriment, want to be involved in that, the political.
I agree.
The political side of it. And I think it's because while bridges were burned, because they definitely were, there are a lot of people that are upset with the conventions, not just national, state-wide. And then even in Texas, you have the two, right? Well, there's the liberal side, and then, everybody else. Or is there three in Texas?
Well, there are two. There are two state conventions in Texas, and you have one that's, moderate, and then you have one that's, depending on who you ask, is either conservative or fundamentalist. And so it just depends on where you are on the spectrum. Yeah.
Sure. Now, of course, Texas is huge, so that, there's definitely going to be that. And so,
so an example of that, Miles, just cut in real quick. You were talking about, the associations kind of working at the county level. Like the association that our church is part of is spread out over 3 counties. And it just, depending on, what's going on, who's backed out, who's been added. Our association is between 90 and 100 churches.
Yeah. Which is huge.
Yeah.
And the same thing is the one where I was at before here, when I was on the other side of the state. There was 48 churches in 2 counties, maybe. No, it was just 2 counties. And so, I mean, it just depends, like where I'm at now. Geographically, towns are so far apart that it's really hard for the association to really do well, because you're hours apart. Like you're an hour from here, you're an hour from there. If you don't live in a bigger town, those types of things. And so where I would say that the associational level, I'm not saying they're perfect by any means, because there definitely is always going to be, anytime you have man in something, it's going to mess something up, right? I think that's fair to say. I think anybody in all these things understand that. And pastors, you got to humble yourself a little bit and understand that you can be wrong in some of the mistakes just as much as I can. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. There has to be that idea there. And I think one of the things that is encouraging, and most church members aren't going to know this unless someone does these things and isn't a part of these things, is that these smaller state or these smaller associations are really trying to get back to that cooperating together for the sake of the whole. Does that make sense? Where I'm talking about sharing those, like, okay, this church is going to Haiti, and we have 10 extra spots if you want to go. You're any church in the association. I mean, we're raising money. We're helping fund it. It's not just, we want you to, of course, get as much as you can, right? But we're still trying to make sure that it's available for all of us to go. Or even not even, international missions, state and local things. Hey, we're putting on, there's this tremendous ministry I'm just going to use names, in Enid, that does, what they call grill walks. They're nationwide. They take people to San Diego. They take people to, all these destitute places in the United States, and including our own states, or including our own state. And, our associations are starting to utilize those things. And this comes through cooperative program giving. So it's kind of like you can't there are lots of problems that you can argue and go through, and I'm not going to dismiss them because I know there are lots of problems involved in it, but also there's so many good things that go along with it as well that as a church member, I think if you, man, how do I say this? You should be involved because it is major impact. It is doing major impactful work. And you should want to know what God is doing and maybe even give you a spark and say, hey, we can do this here. We can have a grill walk where we're at, or we can just, I don't know, pray for these people, or, hey, our church is made up of, our median age is 70. We are not able to go overseas. We are not able to do these things, but we can send $25 to this place, and that $25 is going to help. You know what I mean? And I think that's the beauty, and that's the reason why I would say you should be involved. And then, of course, moving from a church job to working for the cooperative program, essentially, getting to see the benefit that it happens. Like in Oklahoma, we were very blessed by the giving of the state, because there are lots of states, well, even your own, where people like me in my position have to raise funds to work at major universities, not even little D2 schools. We're talking major universities. Same thing in Arkansas. A lot of these guys are having to raise their own funding before they can even do a ministry, which you and I can both say is very important, because reaching the college mind is huge, and especially in liberal places, if I can say it that way. And the cooperative program, depending on how big your state is, of course, also helps in those areas.
Yeah, and part of the problem you have in Texas with that is that you've got somewhere around 230 universities across the state. I mean, 230 universities. I mean, that's a large number. I don't know what California has, or some of the other big states, but man, that's a lot. And if you're going to have a BCM, a Baptist Collegiate Ministries organization, on every single campus, I mean, you just do the math. I mean, if you're going to pay, let's say the average BCM director a full-time salary, I mean, I don't know what 226 times, let's say $65,000 is, not counting benefits.
Sure.
I mean, you're getting into a lot of money. And so that's one of the reasons why, you've got quite a number of BCM directors down here that do have to raise their own money, because size brings with it a whole different set of problems. And that's certainly one of them. Yeah. I just wanted to interject that.
No, I think that's fair. And the other side of it is, what is it? My grandpa used to say to me, he said a lot of things.
I've heard a lot of things your grandpa used to say. Remember, this is a Christian podcast, Miles.
Yes. Well, my grandpa had his struggles for sure. Is
this the one about the buckets?
No. That'll be another time. But it's kind of the same thing. What you're about is what your money will be about. And what he means is, what he was saying to me is, like, where you spend your money, you're going to find out what's important to you.
Jesus said something like that.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
I was getting there, but you kind of took my thunder away. Thanks for poking holes in my sail.
Well, I do what I can to help the process.
But yes. And so, that same principle, which I learned from, I didn't grow up in a Christian home, so learned from my grandpa first. Now, I don't know if he got it from church, but maybe he did. But I think when you look at a church and what they're giving or not giving, or what they're doing with their money or not doing with their money, kind of shows you, I won't say the health, but the overall thinking. And if the biggest thing I tell people is, if you want change, then speak up. If you want, and this starts at your church level, if you're like, well, why are we not involved in these things? Well, because we've asked you to be involved and nobody wants to be involved, so we quit asking. You know what I mean? And the same thing is in our church is like when we have business meeting, it's like, well, I ain't going to that, dude. And they're not even that long. Like, it's like people are like, it's going to take so long. It takes like 20 minutes to talk about, unless there's a hot topic. Right. It's like 20 minutes. And usually even the hot topic is like, okay, that was kind of wild, but we're done with that. Now, don't get me wrong. I know there are exceptions to that. There are a lot more heated things. Been fortunate to be a part of churches where, for the most part.
Oh, I thought you were going in a different direction with that. I'm sorry.
No, definitely not going to go the direction you thought. I've been fortunate to be involved in churches that aren't at huge disagreements. Like, I haven't been had to deal with some major devastation. There's definitely been some hard ones for sure, but not like a looming church split or anything like that. Maybe if I thought it was going to be, it turns out it wasn't that bad. So, but I think that in the layman term is you should be involved in these things because, I mean, we want to see the gospel advance, and we want to do the best with what God has given us, financially, people wise, everything from top to bottom. We want to do the best with what God has given us, and this is a way to watch and to learn and to see what is happening. But yeah, that's I mean, I guess that's the pro. There are some cons that I would say as a member, you have to be very careful, because if you're not careful, you'll let someone else do the work God's telling you to do by using the cooperative program. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like instead of you going out and reaching your neighborhood, you're like, nah, I'm just sending $50 a year to this thing to let someone else do what God has called me to do. Does that make, I mean, I think there's the danger. And I think there's a danger even as, Baptists as a whole that we hold, sometimes we hold the cooperative program almost, in a super, I gotta be careful here, super place where I think it allows us to be lazy as church people because we're expecting other people to do our diligence and do our work. So,
you know, one of the things that we've talked about as far as like church business meetings go is that, you know, most people, you know, they want to go to church, they want to sing, they want to hear a sermon, they want to be challenged spiritually, all of those things. But when it comes to the inner workings and sort of that behind the scenes look at how things get done and mistakes that are made and things that aren't handled as well as they should be, you know, most people don't want to know about all of that. How much of that kind of mentality do you think plays a role in not just the local church, but also in terms of the association, the state, and then of course ultimately the national? Like, I don't want to see how the sausage is made. I just want to know that it's made.
Yeah. No, I think that plays a huge part into it. In fact, the podcast I was listening today, was talking about that very thing. Is most people don't want to see how exact terms as you used is the sausage is made, because it's an uncomfortable process. And most people don't want to be the people who argue about things in the church, I guess. I don't know.
Well, not only that, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to point out not only that, but then you also have real disagreements on a very fundamental level a lot of times. Like, I know, you know, I've been a part of financial committee meetings or stewardship committee meetings where people have expressed serious reservations over the idea of the church having money set aside in investment accounts. You know, where it's just drawing maybe 0.5% or 1.25% or whatever, but just the idea that the church has money in investment accounts is a real turnoff to them. Like, they just really have an issue with that. So in addition to what you're saying, you also have those very fundamental disagreements and philosophical disagreements about what should we do with this.
Yeah, I think so. I think that plays a huge part into it. And a lot of times this is why with young people, they don't want to do anything in the church, because if they've grown up in church, they've watched this red tape thing be, you know, overused. Like, well, we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't do this, we can't do that. very rarely, is it, I shouldn't say very rarely. It just feels as like most time it's a no more than it is a yes. And it's because of
Well,
those.
yeah, and what happens is, say okay, so like one of the things that we have here, there are certain things that we need to do in order to reach our community, but since I'm new, there's not really a budget for that.
Sure.
They didn't, they
Yeah.
weren't thinking that way when they did the last budget, and so now there's not money that's really set aside for that. Well, in order
Yeah.
to do that, according to our bylaws, you have to go back to the church and you've got to get approval to spend X amount of money on community outreach, for example. Well,
Sure.
that feels like red tape. I mean, that feels like
Sure.
bureaucracy. That feels like,
Sure.
and it feels somewhat silly to have to go and ask money to do outreach, or ask for money to do outreach, when the Bible clearly tells us that we're supposed to do
Sure.
outreach. So I can understand that. And I can understand why that's frustrating.
Yeah. But I also can say this is, especially if you read, Romans 13, which I just preached, and I don't know why I stayed in Romans. The more I have to deal with passages, the more, of course it grows me, but it's been interesting to say the least.
Well, it's all God's word, Miles.
That's right. That is right. But my point being is that the government has its place, and the government says that entities such as 501(c)(3)s, nonprofit, religious organizations have to do things a certain way. And if what we don't like is that specific way is not easy to do. And so it is, like you said, those red tape issues where it is silly that we have to have a business meeting to talk about adding, 10 grand to the budget, or reallocating lines to now do this outreach thing. But even if it is silly to you, it is still a thing that needs, like, it's the way things have to go.
Right.
To protect the church, to protect your status and those types of things that matter, because I don't think people understand what can happen if a church is found in a place that is not observing their bylaws and charters, and what the government can do there. I think that there's this idea that, well, we're a church and we're blah blah blah. Well, there's so many facets to being a church that are very important to how we conduct ourselves and how we do what I'll do the thing business, and how we do things are very important. But if it's never explained well, like, I didn't know this until I became a pastor, of, hey, yes, I get it. You don't want to have to do this. You don't want to call these 10 people and say, hey, we need to need to do all these things. But it is the way it has to be done, because that's the way that it protects the church, and it's just the way it has to be done. And all these things that we do come from there. And as what I tell young people is listen, you don't want to walk away because you just don't want to deal with it. Because if it's your church, which it is, if it's a place where you want the gospel to be advanced, and you're trying to do these things, you stick in there, and you do what you need to do. You need to, if it's to rewrite the bylaws, why? If it's to have business meetings and say, hey, can we do more outreach? And I have ideas and all these things. There's a reason you're in the body, and there's a reason that the body there's a reason you're there. And if that's the reason, then let it be the reason. I've talked to many young people about shaking things up, and I'm like, you can't get frustrated when you try to walk into a room and you turn the thermostat down. It takes a while to get the room to acclimate. You know what I'm saying? Right. It takes a while for the room to come to the temperature in which the thermostat is set at. And there are places in the room that will never get that temperature, but yet it's still in the room. And so we have to learn how to function, and you don't do that by quitting, and you don't do that by just giving up, because the church is something we all should be in, and to the death. We should be involved in helping do these things and bringing about those things to reach ultimately the Great Commission, right? So
sure, but
poke a hole in
where?
that.
Well, no, I mean, I don't want to do that, but I mean, I'm just thinking, okay, so, but again, we kind of started off talking about the denominational structure and all of that. I mean, do you consider now it's a collection of churches for sure, and so it is the church from one standpoint, but from another standpoint, I mean, is it really? I mean, is this really? uh, I don't know. I don't even know how to ask what it is that I'm really that I'm really thinking. I just know that me as a pastor, I've got limited time.
Sure.
And I only have so many hours in the day. And so, I've got to, and like when I was at my former church, I was writing, I was teaching classes at the college, I was trying to be a good husband and a good father. And, you run out of time and there's only so much time that you've got. And so then you want to add on to that. Okay, so now I have to go meet with this group of pastors, or I have to go,
Sure.
drive, an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes to go do this meeting, and then drive home, and then that's a day that I've lost. And when you start adding all of that up, even though each individual thing might only be a limited amount of time, but when you add it all up, it's quite a bit of time. And so
Sure.
where do you draw those lines where you say, okay, in order for me to pastor my church effectively, in order for me to pastor my family effectively, what do I cut? Do I cut sermon prep time? Do I cut,
Sure.
this writing, this discipleship material time that's for the flock that God has entrusted to me? What do I cut out?
I think that's going to be different for each guy. Not everybody is writing discipleship material. Not everybody's teaching at a college. Not everybody those things. I know lots of bivocational guys that are still involved in associational level things. Now they may not make every pastor staff fellowship thing where each Tuesday they talk about whatever, but they still know what's happening. They still know watching the budget. They're still involved in those things, and they want to be involved in those things because they see the importance. And those types of things, I think that's going to be one of those things that is going to be each guy. Like my friend is all about this kind of stuff. And he preaches full time. I don't know what his study time is. I imagine it's pretty significant. He's a smart guy. Also does college outreach at his church, also, has 4 kids. So I think it's just all in where your heart's going to take you. Obviously you can't be at everything. And so you make a choice and you just stick with your choice. I don't know where that level is, to find out, but I think because now you start to ask yourself the question, well, what's the point of being Southern Baptist if I'm not even involved in it?
Because we're right, bro.
That's crazy. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be, because I am a Southern Baptist and will be until they do something radically crazy, which, yeah, you keep watching, could happen. Again, you won't know what we're talking about if you're not paying attention to Southern Baptist life. So, but the other side of it is also that there's, I don't know where that line is. That's all I can say is I was heavily involved in, when I was at the last church, or the church I was at, I was heavily involved in the association. Went to all the meetings, went to everything I could be. I was on committees for those things. As a young guy, it was always a privilege to be considered for these things, because you're still young, and lots of times you're not given that choice or that chance to be involved. And out of 48 churches, out of 48 people, actually, sometimes 60 to 70, depending on how many have youth pastors at the time. I was chosen to do some major things, and it was a blessing, and maybe that's why I look at it and can see the importance. That's the associational level. Never been involved in the state level as far as on committees or anything like that. But in the associational level, man, these are guys that I'm literally in the trenches with, literally doing the same things in the same places. Now it's different than it is here because we were a lot closer together.
Geographically.
Geographically. That's
Right.
what I mean. Yes. Where I didn't have to drive an hour to talk to a pastor. I could go 5 minutes down the road and he's in the same town with the same people, the same problems. Everything's close to me. Well, everything is the same. You're in the same town. And then, you could branch out further than that. And the areas are still kind of all particularly the same. And so that was more, I love the associational level, loved it. And it provided a great sense of source for me. I had to do church discipline at a church without a pastor. These were the guys that I ran to and, just cried with, prayed with. These are the guys who really helped shape me as a pastor's mind, in those teams. Kind of like, I would say the relationship that I developed with you, just being in the same town and doing ministry in the same town, was the ministry that I had and friendship I had with like 10 guys. And that to me is the most important thing because as well as I do, as a pastor, it's lonely. And there's aspects in which you can't say to church members, not that you're talking bad about them, but you don't want them to, you're carrying their burden, if that's a better way to say it. And so you can only unload in certain places. And the associational level is kind of where I learned that you could do those things. Not with everybody, of course. I mean, we're still people, but you find that's where I found those people. And that's the love I have for the association level. And even the associations I'm in now, I don't get to do the fellowship stuff because you're right. It's an hour away. It's a day. Like it's a day deal. I would leave at 8 and won't get home till like 3. And then, there's nothing left. And so there are those times and sometimes I'm wondering if I should sacrifice, once a week or once a month, and looking into getting involved in those things. Of course, you don't know. You don't know what the week brings because there's always a challenge in every corner.
Yeah.
And
we're obviously talking about something here that the scripture doesn't speak explicitly about.
Sure.
Right. I mean, there's no place in Romans where you can turn and where Paul gives counsel on, how much associational involvement each pastor needs to undertake. So you're right when you say that it just depends on the individual. But what I found is that while that's true and that's correct, with a lot of people, that's not reality. I mean, with a lot of people, if you're not at every meeting or if you don't make this a really high priority, well, then you're somehow less than the rest of us.
I can't disagree with you there. I know that's true, and I know that will be true probably for the ends of time. But what I can say and what I would say to any pastor listening to this, you need to humble yourself because there have been seasons in your ministry where you were not able to do things because of life,
right.
And there are times when you just need to take, and this is only because I've been chastised by men. You don't understand what they're going through. And then you kind of just got to stop talking and listen and understand that there are seasons and times in life where men are in the fire. If we want to use, I'll just use biblical terms. They're literally in the oven, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and all they're holding on to is Christ. And they can't make an associational meeting because their church is falling apart. Their life is falling apart. The literal gates of hell just feel like they're at the door, that they can't do what you want them to do. And it has nothing to do with you. And maybe instead of treating them like they're less than, then maybe that's the time where you stop and you pray. Or I don't know, do what you're supposed to do as a Christian, right? And love each other. So this would be where the humility says, if I'm on any associational things, and I'm probably gonna get in trouble, but if I'm a pastor in an associational thing and someone hasn't been coming for a long time, instead of just writing their church off, maybe I give them a phone call.
Sure.
Maybe, I don't even think maybe. The right thing to do is to reach out to our churches and say, hey, I don't know what's going on. I don't know. Because if you're like me, you walk into this thing blind, you have no idea the beef that has happened. You have no idea what's gone on in the associational level. So you walk in, you're like, hey, there's these churches aren't involved. Well, has anybody called them? Well, no, they just quit coming 10 years ago. So we just, move on without them. Well, why?
Yeah.
Well, why? Maybe they need help. Maybe I don't know. Maybe their churches are closed. Maybe their church is dying. Maybe there's a way we can anyways. Yeah, I'm going to get off my soapbox about those things. But I can say this about Oklahoma Baptist, and this will be my last thing, is we have leadership that cares about the smaller churches. And I know there are going to be some people that don't agree with me, and that's okay. But I spent time calling churches that I will never do anything other than call them and pray with them. And that is something that our leadership from the top has made priority that all of us do. All of us that work for Oklahoma Baptist call churches to pray with pastors to see how we can help them, see if they have any needs, complaints, whatever that is, and to talk to them and pray with them. Now I know that's a small thing, but it's a huge thing in convention life. You know what I mean? For the convention to be reaching out to every church in the state at least one time. And that's a major task that has been assigned to the Oklahoma Baptist. And so I think that while these problems exist, I think, at times you see glimpses of hope. You see glimpses of the church and what it's supposed to be in, and that was where I would tell people to rest and try to be involved in those things. So,
yeah, and I think that's really good, and I do think that the cooperative program, I do think that working together is an idea that's worth holding on to, and I do think some things could be done better. But you're always going to have that, right? And so I think there's great value in the partnership that exists, and so I agree with all of that, and I think every pastor and I think every church member, to the extent that they can, ought to be as involved as they can, and so that's a good word. And I think that's encouragement, and I think that's advice and counsel that's well worth hanging on to for sure.
It's good. Well, I don't know if this will be one of the most listened to, but hey, if you made it this far, you know a lot more about it than you used to. So,
hey, where are we on having more guests, Miles? I mean, I enjoy talking to you, but the guests bring on a whole different level of
that is true.
Flavor and
I think
excitement.
I think I'll have one lined up for us this next week. I'll make sure that happens. It's been kind of crazy around here, with weddings and all. I forgot one, and then I had one this week.
That was really funny. How did that end up, by the way? So you walk in the door, hey guys.
Dude, no. I've never felt, well, that's not true. I felt shame lots of times, but I felt I'm like, Miles, get it together. I felt so bad. But hey, you know what, Chris? They're married, bruh. It happened.
That's right.
That's right. I may not come through on time, but I will eventually.
But you will come through, and that's what matters.
Right. That's right. But no, I felt super bad.
I bet you did.
So I did. Yeah. You can go back. Actually, I think it's at minute.
Well, we all
20
saw
minutes.
it. Well, those of us who listen to the podcast, we all kind of saw it. I saw you look at your phone and you had a facial expression, and I thought, uh-oh, something's just gone down.
So if you go back and look, I think it's like 22 minutes or left. You see Miles' demeanor change very quickly. Well, I don't even really know what Chris and Jen was talking about at that point in time, but yeah.
That's awesome.
And then, yeah. Anyways, I hope they don't watch that episode because then they're gonna be like, he talked for 20 minutes after.
Well, what were you supposed to do? I mean, at that point, you're late. At that point, look, you're at least 45 minutes late. You might as well just finish the episode at that point.
That's what I'm saying. And and I'm the guy that's doing all the technical side. So I'm like, well, all right, Brad.
Yeah, what's another 20 minutes at that point?
Yeah, well, the other 20 minutes is you agging me on. Hey, it's fine, bro. It's fine. You're already late.
That's not really the way I remember it. What I remember is,
you're like,
hey, Miles, do you think you need to go, buddy?
No, that's so not true. So not true. Well, yeah. On that note, now we'll have a guest. I'll talk to a couple.
We need to get some East Texas guests on here.
Well, I can't. Just give me random numbers. Hey, this is Miles from Talks of Outkasts. I was wondering if you'd like to be on the podcast.
I've got a guy who I think would be really good and really funny and really entertaining. But he's
that's
country.
What I like to hear.
He is country.
That's okay. I used to be country, but now I'm Midwestern, I think.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Well, on that note, we'll see you next time, yeah?
All right. Well, good luck and, keep on rocking. Yours in Christ.
That's right. That's right.
Pastor
Eastbound
Chris.
and down.
Eastbound and down. All right.
All right. We'll see you.
See ya.